All right, baseball winding down. All right, so let's talk about these Dodgers. Let's talk about these Indians a little bit here. So when I think about the streak that the Indians are on, it's ridiculous. But my question is it too early? Now, my biggest thing with postseason in any sport is if you go into the postseason and you like it does not matter what you did all year, but if you go into the postseason and you're cold, you ain't gonna win nothing. If you go into the postseason and you're hot, you're gonna win it all. That's just how it goes. It's not about who the best team is. It's about who's hot at the right time. And remember that, because that's how it goes. That's the thing that's kind of bullshit about playoffs sometimes. You're like, well, shit. We 8 teams made it out of the East over here in the fucking playoffs, and 3 of them were under 500, but they upset their first round opponent. How did this happen? This makes no sense. It's momentum. It's all about momentum. It's all about being right at the right time. So let's talk about this here. So the Indians are on a 15-game winning streak about 2 to 3 weeks before the season ends and the postseason starts. It really honestly makes me nervous. In the last couple of weeks, I'm like, man, this is making me look good. Making me look good. The Indians are really playing hot. I kind of picked them at the All-Star break when they were just kind of like one of the other clubs. They were one of the top clubs then, but like, you didn't know how they'd pan out. Twins were still close. Royals were still close. They were right there in the thick of the AL with the Red Sox, with the Yankees. There was not really this definitive who's who other than the Astros were the team in the AL. So throughout the second half, the Indians have solidified themselves. They have probably the best record in the second half, probably by far. And they have they look solid as of late. The thing that makes them the best, though, or like not maybe the best, but one of the best teams is their balance. It's not always, we got to rely on the offense all the time. Like the Yankees, they're always relying on one thing. Either we're always relying on the offense or we're always relying on the bullpen and the pitching staff. And whichever one we're relying on, the other one's not going. The Indians, it's the exact opposite. They rely on their pitching staff some. They rely on their hitters some, and it becomes a balancing act. And now they're at the balancing act point where they've balanced it really well, and they've won 15 in a row. Now, there's other teams that are playing really well. Not Dodgers. The D-backs won 13 in a row. They look really good. They have solidified their spot in the wild card. But so talking about this last, I'll be honest with you. I definitely have not watched as much baseball lately as I was when football wasn't going on. I've kind of switched over to football a lot more now. But good news is a lot hasn't changed too much. And I'm still able to pay attention just enough to see exactly what's going on, follow things there. So let's look at the AL wildcard. So AL wildcard, Yankees had a huge series this weekend against the Rangers. I know a lot of Rangers fans, and just like usually when the Yankees and the Rangers fans, they send me a little picture of the score, let me know that the Rangers came back or whatever. Well, the Rangers were up 5-1 Friday, shit a brick, and lost the game, but they handled the Rangers Saturday and Sunday, made me real happy. I knew Servino. I was really nervous on Saturday, though. Servino, they gave up 1 run. The Yankees weren't scoring. I was like, are we about to lose this game 1-0? We were able to come back in the 9th, and then we slaughtered them on Sunday. Judge hit 2 home runs. Sanchez hit 2 home runs. It was great. So we've solidified ourselves a little bit there. We're 3.5 games up in the wild card. We're 3.5 back on Boston. Now, I don't know if I elaborated a little bit on the Apple Watch espionage bullshit. Now, think about this at the end of the year. Well, I already talked about how, the Yankees played a lot better against the Red Sox last weekend than they did before that. Well, think about this. Think about it at the end of the year if the Yankees are 1 game back. I think I already talked about this, but if they're 1 game back and they lose it by 1 game, if they lose the AL East by 1 game, it's like, damn. And now we're starting to get to a point now where Cleveland has passed Houston. They have a better winning percentage, a .7 better winning percentage than Houston. So now, yesterday I told myself, I go, wow, shit. I was really not at the All-Star break. My mindset at the All-Star break was, man, this sucks for the Yankees. We're going to have to face the Astros, and that's not going to be a fun game. That's not going to be a fun series at all. And then yesterday I was going, wait, we should continue to play good enough to get a wild card spot, but not win the AL East, because we're going to have to face Cleveland. I don't think there's a team that wants to face Cleveland right now. I don't want to face Cleveland in the playoffs. Let's have Boston go face them. So it's a real vice versa until I just realized that Cleveland has passed Houston, and I think they will solidify that number one spot. So too bad Yankees, too bad other wild card team. If you're playing the Indians round one, you're done. Houston, Boston, that'll be a fun series. I'd rather see the Red Sox win that though, because I really want to see the Red Sox and the Indians go at it. The last couple of years, they've had some really good series. I was really surprised last year. I thought Boston was primed to really. It was Big Poppies last year. I thought that they would handle the Indians. I think the Indians got hot at the end of the year and just creeped into the playoffs. And so I was really not high on Cleveland last year. I knew little about Cleveland when they made the playoffs last year. But now it's completely different. They're solid. They're one of the better teams. I do not want to face Cleveland. And now you talk about that second wild card spot. We've got Minnesota, who's got a 43% chance. They've sustained. They're 5 games over 500. And the Angels, they're about the same record. They're 3 games over 500, but they're 73-70 instead of 74-69. They're a game back behind Minnesota. They've got a 27% chance to get that second wild card spot. Kansas City, they're at 500. Texas is at 500. Those two teams we'll talk about. They're two teams. We're not talking about them. We're not going to elaborate on them or anything. We're just saying they're 500, so we'll talk about them. Seattle, Tampa Bay, and Baltimore, I can't talk about you because you're under 500. I won't talk about you. I will say, though, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, and Seattle are all 3 or 3.5 games back. I don't see Baltimore bouncing back after the sweep to the Indians. I thought that they'd get swept by the Indians, and I thought their shit would be done. Tampa Bay had a tough series against the Red Sox, only won 1 of, I think, 3. They've kind of shot themselves in the foot. And Seattle has just not played up to par the last month of the season. Their pitching staff is bad. They haven't been able to get on that streak that they got on after the All-Star break. And then really tough series for the Rangers this last weekend. Tough series for Kansas City. They both had to play Minnesota and the Yankees, and they basically, I think, just lost ground in that. And the Angels are holding on. The Angels are just hanging on, hoping that they get the spot. I really wouldn't be surprised if this is what I'm saying. I want the Twins to play the Yankees. Not because I think that's a better matchup for us. I think that's a worse matchup for us, honestly. But I don't care who plays the Yankees. I don't care if the Yankees lose, because I think the Yankees are going to lose in the first round regardless. But the bigger deal is who will the Yankees face in that first game? Not that it really matters, but the storyline is, will the Twins, who sold at the deadline, who shouldn't be here, who should be back where Toronto is, or Baltimore, but they're up here, and then a team like the Angels, who have made the offseason moves, who, if they don't make the playoffs, they've got Phillips, they've got Upton for no reason. You know what I mean? So it looks really bad if the Angels don't make the playoffs, and I'm sure Rangers and I'm sure Mariners are trying to do their best to make sure the Angels don't get in. So let's talk about the NL for a minute. Now, the NL has got a little bit crazy. So now the Brewers just can't help themselves out. Last week they get swept by the Reds, I'm pretty sure, but then they sweep the Cubs. So let's talk about this year. So let's talk about Dodgers first. Now, Dodgers have won 1 game in the month of September. They're 1-10 in the month of September. They've lost, I think, 3, 6. I think they've lost 9 in a row. Trying to do it in my head. I know they lost 4 in a row to the Rockies. I know they lost 3 in a row to the Diamondbacks. I know they lost 3 in a row to the Diamondbacks 2 weeks ago. I know they won 1 against the Padres, lost 2 against the Padres. They're like basically 1-10 in the month of September. So, this is a time period. I remember about 2-3 weeks ago when Brian Kenny was just losing his shit on MLB Now, that day. He's like, we're going to talk about the Dodgers all day. This needs to be talked about. This team needs to be talked about because this team could go down as one of the greatest teams of all time. It's on pace to have the best record, have one of the best records. And look what he's done. Look what he's done to them. Now they won't even win 100 games. They barely are going to win 100 games. They're only 4 games up on Washington. They could potentially lose home field advantage to Washington if they continue to play like this. And then my one thing that I'll say, my biggest my contrast that I'll say, the difference between the Indians and the Dodgers. None of this matters now. None of this matters if you're hot or if you're cold right now. It does matter, but it doesn't matter record-wise. It doesn't matter your postseason-wise. What does matter is how do you play when the postseason starts? And I am thoroughly confident that the Dodgers will come into the postseason and they're going to play lights out. I think the way I view it is I would much rather have a cold streak now than have a cold streak in October. And I think that's something that might happen to the Indians. Is they may get cold in October. You can only be hot for so long. You eventually go back to being cool, and then you hope that you get hot again when it's a good time. And I don't know if the Indians are gonna do that this year. Very tough to sustain the heat through the whole October. And the Dodgers are at a point where they've played bad lately. I think they can pick it up. The only question mark with them is Wood hasn't been good lately. Darvish hasn't been good since he's came over. And Kershaw just got back from his DL stint, and he's 1-1. He had a real bad start his last start. That's the thing. The pitching is going to be crucial. They have no run support. The run support has been terrible the last couple weeks. I don't think not a big deal. They won't have Adrian Gonzalez, I don't think, in the postseason. That's not a huge deal. But just think about how Washington plays without Bryce Harper. They play they hadn't missed a beat since Harper left. So, Washington's a really good ball club. I'd be scared if I was the Dodgers right now, talking about postseason wise. Now, Arizona has really stepped it up. I talked last week about how, I'm not going to feed into them beating the Dodgers too much, and I'm still not going to feed into it. I don't feed into it at all. They won the season series against the Dodgers 11-8 so far. I don't know if they have any more. They've played good. If they get a matchup against the Dodgers, they should feel confident going into the playoffs. I'm just going to say it now. I'm still picking the Dodgers to beat the D-backs if they face up. I don't see it. Now, things that for the Diamondbacks that you put on, they say, this could be a good team when you got people like Goldie, Lamb, J.D. Martin, Pollock is playing better. When you got four guys like that, those are guys that you can look to and be like, we could have a chance. And then when you look at their starting pitchers, and you've got Greinke and you've got Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray is one of the most underrated pitchers in the league. This is a good team. You say, well, why don't you like us? Well, you're just not as good as the Dodgers. I'm sorry. You're not going to beat the Dodgers. You're probably going to get faced up against the Dodgers, and you're not going to beat them. So the Cubs lost 3 games in a row this weekend to Milwaukee. They haven't looked good lately. They still have an 80% chance to make the postseason. They are, I think, let's see here. They have a 4.8% chance to make the wild card, though. Colorado has an 80% chance to take that second wild card spot. They won, 4 in a row against the Dodgers this last weekend. They're looking good. But things to talk about. St. Louis and Milwaukee are right on the heels of two things. The NL Central, they're 2 games back on the NL Central, and I'm pretty sure they're like 2 games back in the wild card. Yeah, let's see here. They are... 2 games back in the wild card. 3 games back of Colorado in the wild card. 2 games back of the Cubs in the NL Central. Now, like I've talked about all year, in the NL Central, you're probably going to have to win your division. And I've talked all year, I think throughout the year, I've even started to doubt myself that Milwaukee wouldn't get back, that, St. Louis wouldn't get back to Chicago. They wouldn't be able to compete for the NL Central. Well, that's not true. They are competing for the NL Central as well as the wild card spot. And just like I talked all year, maybe these teams can push each other just enough that 2 of them get in instead of 1. Because if things ended today, only one's getting in. But if they push themselves these last 2-3 weeks, they could potentially push themselves over Colorado for a wild card spot. 2 could get in instead of 1. And when I look at St. Louis, I think St. Louis will lose a 1-game series. I think they're, who cares about St. Louis? Milwaukee, I like Milwaukee. I've talked about Milwaukee all year. They lost Jimmy Nelson though, one of their top pitchers. I wouldn't be upset with a Colorado Arizona wild card, but Been pulling for my Brewers all year. Just wish my Brewers could just make something happen. I want to see the Cubs in the playoffs just because I really do. Like, I like the fact that, there's so many people that like the Cubs, and there's so many, like, analysts that are still like, oh, the Cubs could do something, da-da-da-da. Like, they talk about the Cubs as, like, the team of the future last year, and it looks like they're going to be, like, a one-hit, blunder. It looks like the Dodgers are honestly the team of the future, with Seager and with Bellinger. But we'll see what happens. I like, like I've said all year, my favorite thing that I've been watching, and it's going to be compelling all the way to the end. I think some of these wild card matchups are going to start to kind of, be figured out. Like, obviously we know Colorado, St. Louis, or Milwaukee. And then the Cubs, we don't. The thing is it's kind of the intangibles about the NLs. We don't know who's going to be where. Are the Cubs going to continue to fall here in the postseason? But the Cubs have a worse chance to make the wild card than Milwaukee or St. Louis. But they have a really good chance to win the division. I guess they have a weaker schedule coming up. But and then the AL is kind of stayed the same. We've got the Twins and the Angels right there behind the Yankees. I think we can go ahead and say that the Yankees are probably going to take that spot, but it's going to be Twins or Angels. I think we can go ahead and kiss the Royals, the Rangers, the Mariners, the Rays, and the Orioles goodbye with this last weekend of play. But at the same time, can be completely wrong. One of these teams can go on a hot streak, win 6 or 7 in a row, as these other teams are going 3-3. And then, we're right back at where we were at. So it could go either way, but, we'll see what happens with it.